Hi everyone and Happy New Year! It's the start of the year where we all set new goals and new tasks for ourselves, so I thought it would be pretty fun to create our own little task tracker in Python that can be controlled through the command line. If you're new to the channel, I'm Patrick, and on this channel I create weekly videos on Python and machine learning related topics. And in this video we create this command line application that you've just seen with this beautiful table layout, and then it has support for basic operations like adding new to-dos with a text and a category, and also operations like deleting, editing and completing to-dos. Along the way you will learn about two exciting open source libraries. The first is Rich, which we're going to use for the beautiful terminal output, and the second one is Typer, which we use for creating this command line interface. And additionally we use the built-in SQLite module to create our database, so I think this will be pretty fun. And now let's get started. So let's get started, and I recommend to create a new project folder and also a new virtual environment, and then we want to install our dependencies. So we need Rich and Typer, so we can say pip install Rich and Typer, and then we can open our IDE, and inside the folder we want to create three files. So the first one is database.py to work with our SQL database. Then we want to create a model.py for our model class. And we also create basically this is our main file, so we call this todo CLI.py. So first let's implement the todo CLI file. So first we start by adding our import. So we need Typer, then we say from Rich console import console, and we also need the table from the Rich library. Then we create a console object, and then we also create a app object from the Typer library. And now we start adding functions. So we define a function, and the way Typer works is by using those type ins. So for each argument we add a type in, so this should be a string. So here we want to add a task, so we get a task with a string, and we also get a category. And then we say typer.echo, and this is basically printing to the command line. And so here we print adding task and category. And then we have to decorate this by saying app.command. And optionally, we can also use this short help argument. And here we can add a little helper text. So we say adds an item. So we do this for some more functions. So we also add a delete function, and here we specify this should be a int. And then we also want to add a update function. And this is basically it for the start. So now let's say if name equals main, and then we run our app. And now let's save this, and then we can go to our command line. And now we can start typing Python todo CLI.py. And if we run it like this, then we have a missing command. So here we can now say todo CLI.py -- help. And then we get all the different commands. So here we see we have add, delete, and update. And for the add arg command, we also have this little helper text, adds an item. And then we could go further and say todo CLI.py and then add, and then again -- help. And then again we get the hints that we need the argument, task, and category. So yeah, this is what Typer is doing for us. So it makes it pretty simple to add all these command line interactions. So now again, if we say Python todo CLI.py add, and then we need to give it a task. So let's call this todo 1, and then we give it a category, for example, sports, and then it simply prints it to our terminal. So yeah, this is how it works. And now let's start by adding some more functions. So we need one more to complete the task. And here again, it gets the position. And then, of course, we want to show the to-dos. So for this, let's add another function that we call show. and this doesn't get an argument. So now we can, for now I hard code the tasks. So this is a list with tuples. And then first let's print some information to the console. And this time we use the rich print statement. So here we created our console object. This is from the rich library. And now we say console.print. And then here we can specify a color like this. So we say bold, magenta, and then here our text. And then we have the closing syntax. And this is how we could add a color styling. And then let's go on. And now we want to create a header. So we say this is a table that we imported from the rich table module. And then we say show header equals true. And the header style is bold blue. And then we add all the different columns we want. So we add one for the number, one for the to-do, one for the category, and one if it's done or not. And then we can also, for example, specify a min width or a justify argument. And then let's go over all the tasks or to-dos that we have and add them to our columns. So now we say for index and task in enumerate tasks. And I want to start this at a count of 1 and not at 0. And then I want to get a category for the, a color for the category. Then here, for now, I simply hardcode this that the status is always true. So this is always done right now. And then we say table add row. And now we have to add our 4 arguments. So the number, then the task, then the category. And here again, we use this styling to add our color and then the is done string. And now to get the color, we need to implement the get color function. So I add this as an inner function, define get category color. And here I specified some tags. So this is, for example, the tag learn, and this gets the color cyan, then YouTube gets red, and so on. And then we check if this category is in our dictionary, and then we return the corresponding color. And otherwise, we just use the default color white. And then at the very end, we have to say console.print table. And this is basically all we need. And now after each command, we want to call the show function. So here we say show, here we say show, here we say show, and here we say show. Now let's go back to our command line. And here, for example, we can say to do CLI Pi dot and then show. And this just shows our table. So this is working. So now the next thing I want to do is to add our model. So here let's create a class to do, and it gets an init function with self and the task and the category. And then it gets some optional fields. So the date added, the date completed, the status, and a position. And then we initialize the fields. So we say self.task equals task, self.category equals category. Then for the optional arguments, we check if they exist by saying self.added equals date added if date added is not none. Otherwise, we create the current time as a datetime object. So datetime.datetime.now.iso format. So we want to store this in ISO format, and this will give us a string. And of course, for this, we have to import the datetime module. And then we do the same for the other optional fields. So we do this with the date completed fields, with the status field. And here we say the status 1 means that this is not yet done, and the status 2 means that this is completed. And then we also store the position, and the position is used to determine at which position in our table this item is displayed. So this is used for the ordering. And then let's also implement the wrapper function so that this object can be printed in a nicer looking way. So here we simply print all the different attributes in one string. So yeah, this is our model class. And now let's go to our database class and implement this. So first, let's import all the modules we need. So we need Sqlite3. Then we also want to work with typing. We need the datetime again, and we import our model class. Then let's create a connection by saying con equals Sqlite3.connect. And here we put in the database name. So this will be the local file name of our SQLite database. Then we also create a cursor. And now let's first create a function to create a table. So here we execute our SQL command and we say create table if not exists. And then we call the table todos. And then here we put in all the different fields we want to store. So these are the same fields that our model class has. So we put in a task, a category, the two date fields, the status and the position. And for each field, we also have to specify the data type. So this will be either a text type or a integer type. And then let's also call this function. So here we create the table if it does not exist yet. Then let's create a function to insert the to-do. And here first we want to get the number of to-dos in our table. So we execute select count star from to-dos. And then we say c.fetch1 and get the first item. So this will give us the number of items in our table. And then we set the position based on the number of items. So we want to put this at the end of the position. And I want to start in the UI at the position 1. So if we have a look here, it starts at 1. But in our database, we start at index 0. So here we say if we have no items, then we start at 0. And if we have an item, then we start at this count. For example, if the count is 1, then the next position is also 1, which is basically the second item. And then we create we open the connection. So we say with connection. Then we want to insert all the fields. So we say c.execute and then our command insert into to-dos and then the different values. And here we have to be aware of two things. So the first one is this context manager. So if we use this, then as soon as we get out of this context manager, then this will be committed. And the second one is that in our command, we use parameter substitution. So we use a normal string, and then for each argument, we use the syntax with a colon. And then a second argument to our execute function, we put in a dictionary. And here we have to put in all the fields with the same name without the colon as key. So the task is here our task. And then here we specify the value. So this way we prevent SQL injection attacks. So if we would hard code this here, so for example, by using an F string and then here braces and the task, this is not how you should do it. Instead, you should do this parameter substitution syntax. But yeah, this is how you insert to-dos. Then let's create a function to get all to-dos. So here we execute select star from to-dos and then we call c.fetch all and then we convert this to our to-dos objects. So this will be a tuple here. So if we iterate over all the tuples, then we can use this syntax with the star. So this will basically unpack all the arguments and then put it to the constructor of our to-do class. So this creates the to-do objects and then we return them. Then let's create another one to delete the items. So here again, we want to get the number of items in our table. Then again, we say with connection and then we execute our deletion command again here with this parameter substitution syntax. And now what I want to do is I want to shift all the remaining items one position down so that they have the correct position again. So here I say for position in range and then I start at position +1 until all the items. And then I call change position. So this will be a new function that I create. So here this gets the old position and the new position and a optional commit statement. And here, when we call this, we call this with commit equals false. And then inside here, we execute this update command. So we say update todos set. And here we want to set the position where the position is old, and then we put in position old and position new. So if we call this with position and position -1, we basically shift all the items one position down. And then in this case, we don't want to commit this right now, so we can say false. And this means we don't get into this if statement, but then here when we leave the context manager, then all changes will be committed. And yeah, again, this is what I mean by using this context manager. So when we leave this context, then it internally calls this commit. So yeah, then we have this change position function. Then we also need one for the update to-dos, and this gets a position, a task, and a category. And if we have a look back then to our update function, so here we see that they could be optional. So it could either be a task or a category or both. So this is what I want to check here in this 3 if statements. And then I want to update either all 2 fields or only one of them. So here only the task, and here only the category, and here both the task and the category. And then we only need one more function to complete a to-do. So this gets a position, and then here we execute updates to-dos. And here we want to set the status to 2. And then we also want to set the date completed field, and then here we check where position equals position, and then we put in the position, and then again for the date completed time we get the current time in ISO format. And yeah, this is all that we need for our database implementation. And now we need to go back to our to-do CLI and add those database functions. So now let's import our to-do class, and then we import all the functions we just created, and then we call them in our different methods. So for example, in the add function, we now create a to-do by saying we create a to-do and we only need to give it a task and a category. So the other fields are optional. And then we call insert to-do. And then we do the same for all the other functions. So in our delete functions, here we say delete to do. And here we have to be careful because again, we start in the UI at the position 1, but in the database at 0. So here we say position -1. Then for the update, then we call the update to do. And here again, we use position -1 with the task and the category. And for the complete function, we call complete to do with position -1. And then here I hard-coded the tasks, but now we can use the function get all to-dos. And then here where we use this tuple, we can now use the fields from our to-do object. So the 1 is the category. So here we can use the category. Then here for the status, we can use the actual task.status. And then here again, we can switch this and say task.task and here task.category. And now this is all that we need. So now we can go back to our terminal and test this. So here now first clear this, and then as first thing I want to show all items. So now it's empty. So now let's say to do cli.py, and then we want to add, and here we want to say, yeah, let's say to do 1, and we give it the category sports, and now it will be added to our database, and we see this. So let's use a second one, and here let's use the category YouTube, and then this is in red. Then let's set one to completed. So here let's say complete and then the number 2. Then we see the status is now done. And yeah, now we could basically use all the different commands I showed you in the beginning. And that's all I want to show you in this tutorial. And yeah, if this was too fast, then the code will also be available on GitHub. I will put the link in the description. And yeah, if you enjoyed this video, then please hit the like button. And then I hope to see you in the next video. Bye.